A man once traveled 3 days to find Jesus. Not to be healed. Not to be blessed. Not to worship. To expose him. He was a scholar. A man of logic. A man who had dismantled every false prophet, every wandering preacher, every so-called miracle worker who had passed through his village. He had a method: 3 questions. In 30 years, no one had survived all 3. And now everyone was talking about a carpenter from Nazareth. This Son of God. This Jesus. The scholar smiled when he heard the stories. Give him 10 minutes with this carpenter and the illusion would crumble. It always did. He arrived on the 3rd day. Dusty. Tired. Ready. What he was not ready for was what happened next. The man who came to test God. His name was Ezra. He wasn't cruel. He didn't hate God. He had simply seen too many liars wrap themselves in God's name. It started 15 years ago. A healer came through his village, a man who claimed God's power flowed through his hands. Half the village gave him money. A widow named Hannah gave everything she had: her last coins, her late husband's ring, her children's food money, because the healer promised to cure her son's withered leg. The healer took the money, laid hands on the boy, declared him healed, left before sunrise. The boy's leg never changed. Hannah's family starved that winter. The boy died in the spring. Not from the leg, from hunger. Because his mother had given their food money to a fraud who wrapped himself in God's name. Ezra found Hannah sitting in her empty house the day after the boy's funeral. She wasn't crying. She was past crying. She looked at Ezra with dead eyes and said, "I believed him. He said God would heal my son." That day Ezra made a vow. Never again. Not in his village. Not while he breathed. He would study every technique, every trick, every manipulation that false prophets used, and he would expose them. One by one. Until no one in his region could be deceived. And he did. 30 years. Dozens of frauds dismantled. His reputation spread. Don't go to Ezra's territory. That old man will destroy you. Preachers avoided his village entirely. Ezra was proud of this. Not vain pride. The pride of a watchman on a wall. He protected people. His doubt was not arrogance, it was armor. Not for himself. For the Hannahs of the world. But armor worn long enough becomes skin. And Ezra had forgotten where the armor ended and he began. He reached Capernaum on the 3rd day. Hundreds of people pressing toward a single point: the sick, the desperate, the broken. Ezra pushed through. He wanted to see the man's eyes. That's where the truth lived. The eyes of a fraud always flickered. Always. A micro-expression, a glance toward the crowd to gauge their reaction. In 30 years, Ezra had never missed it. He broke through the inner circle and stopped. Jesus was sitting on a rock. Ordinary. No golden robes. No armed guards. Just a man in a dusty tunic. In front of him stood a boy, 8 years old, maybe 9. His legs were twisted beneath him, not injured but malformed. Born this way. He was propped on crude wooden crutches, his feet bent at angles that made Ezra wince. His mother stood behind him, hands on his shoulders, her face a mask of exhausted hope. The crowd was watching. Ezra positioned himself close. Close enough to see the technique. Close enough to catch the trick. Jesus looked at the boy. Not at the legs. At the boy. That same total attention Ezra had heard about the way he looked at people as if the rest of the world had ceased to exist. "What's your name?" Jesus asked. "Tobias," the boy whispered. "Tobias? Do you like to run?" The boy's eyes filled. "I've never run." Jesus knelt. He placed both hands on the boy's legs. He closed his eyes. The crowd held its breath. And Ezra watched with the eyes of a man who had spent 30 years watching. He heard it before he saw it. A sound like knuckles cracking, but deeper. Structural. The sound of bone reshaping. The boy gasped, not in pain, something else. Surprise. His mother's hands flew to her mouth. Ezra looked at the legs. They were straightening. Not metaphorically. Not gradually. He could see the bones shifting beneath the skin. The twisted angles correcting themselves in real time, the left foot rotating from its impossible inward angle to flat, the right knee unbending from its permanent crouch, the shin bones lengthening visibly, muscles filling in where there had been atrophy. This was not psychosomatic. This was not suggestion. This was not a planted actor. Ezra could see the bones moving under the skin. He could hear them. Cartilage, tendon, muscle, bone restructuring in seconds what nature had malformed from birth. The crutches fell. The boy stood. On his own legs. Straight. Steady. His mother collapsed to her knees screaming. And the boy Tobias looked down at his legs. Looked at his feet, flat on the ground for the first time in his life. And he took a step. One step. Then another. Then running. He was running. A boy who had never run was running in circles around Jesus, laughing, screaming, his bare feet slapping the dirt. The crowd erupted. People were sobbing, shouting, falling to their knees. Ezra stood still. His mind was racing. Cataloging. Analyzing. But for the first time in 30 years his catalog had no entry for this. Bones don't reshape. Congenital deformities don't reverse in seconds. No trick, no technique, no sleight of hand could make bone move visibly beneath skin. His jaw tightened. One miracle doesn't make a Messiah. He still had his 3 questions. He waited. By evening the crowd had thinned. Jesus sat by a fire near the lake. A few disciples nearby, eating bread, talking quietly. The last orange light of sunset burning on the water. Ezra approached. He stood at the edge of the firelight. Jesus was looking into the fire. When Ezra stopped, Jesus looked up. Their eyes met. Ezra had looked into hundreds of eyes. He could read a man's soul in 3 seconds. Jesus's eyes stopped him. Not because they glowed or shimmered. Because they were clear. Completely, terrifyingly clear. No performance. No calculation. No mask. No layer between the surface and the depth. He shook it off. He needed his questions. "Teacher, I've traveled 3 days to speak with you." Jesus nodded. Sit down, Ezra. He hadn't given his name. His mind raced. Someone in the crowd must have mentioned him. Word travels. There were explanations. He sat. You know my name. I know more than your name, Jesus said. Not boasting. Stating fact. But you didn't come to talk about what I know. You came to find out if I'm real. Ask what you came to ask. The first question. Ezra leaned forward. The question that destroyed theologians. If God is all-powerful and all-loving, why does a child die? Why does a baby who has never sinned suffer and die while murderers live to old age? If you are from God, explain his justice. The fire crackled. The disciples looked at Jesus. Ezra had asked this question 100 times. The answers were always the same. God's ways are mysterious. Suffering builds character. Empty phrases pasted over a wound no one could heal. Jesus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You had a daughter." Ezra's blood went cold. She was 4. Her name was Miriam. She had your eyes. She used to sit on your lap while you read. She would play with your beard and ask you questions about the stars. No one knew about Miriam. He had never spoken her name after she died. He had buried her himself. Carried her small body to the hillside. Dug the grave with his own hands beneath the 3rd olive tree, the one with the split trunk, because she used to play there and he wanted her to rest where she had left. 23 years. And this stranger was speaking her name by a fire. She died of fever, Jesus continued. His voice was the voice of someone who was there. Not retelling, remembering. 3 days. You tried everything. You held her at night while her body burned. You prayed. You, who never prayed, you begged God to take you instead. Tears fell down Ezra's face. He didn't notice. She died in your arms. Just before dawn. And something in you went still. And you decided that either God didn't exist or God wasn't good. Silence. That's not an answer, Ezra whispered. That's my story. Your question was never about theology, Ezra. Your question was about Miriam. Jesus reached toward Ezra's chest. Not touching, pointing. To the leather cord around his neck. Hidden beneath his tunic. The cord Ezra had worn for 23 years. The one no one had ever seen. You wear her bracelet. The one you braided for her from goat skin on her 3rd birthday. 3 strands, one for each year. She wore it every day until she died. You took it from her wrist before you buried her. It's on that cord. Against your chest, over your heart. Ezra's hand flew to his chest. His fingers found the cord. The small braided ring beneath his tunic that he had never shown another living soul. His breathing shattered. How do you? Because I was there, Jesus said. Under the 3rd olive tree. The one with the split trunk. I was there when you laid her down. I was there when you covered her face with the white cloth. I was there when you sat in the dirt beside her grave until the sun came up and you couldn't feel your legs. Ezra was shaking. I didn't come to explain why she died, Ezra. No explanation would satisfy you, even a perfect one. Because you don't want to understand. You want her back. A sound came from Ezra that he didn't recognize, not a sob, something deeper, something animal, something 23 years old. She is not in that ground. She is not under that olive tree. She is alive. And she still has your eyes. And one day, not in metaphor, not in poetry, you will hold her again. And she will play with your beard. And ask you about the stars. And you will have forever to answer. Ezra's first question, his masterpiece, lay in pieces. Not because Jesus had explained suffering, but because he had seen the wound behind the question. The second question. Minutes passed. Ezra composed himself, wiped his face. His hands still shook, but his mind, that disciplined, fortress-like mind, reassembled. The bracelet could have been a guess. The olive tree, someone might have seen him. There were explanations. He pressed forward. Every prophet claims authority from God. Everyone. The madman in the market claims God speaks to him. The priest claims God chose him. You claim God sent you. What makes your claim different? What proof do you offer that you are not another man using God's name? The trap question. If Jesus claimed miracles, Egyptian sorcerers performed miracles. If he claimed scripture, every cult leader quoted scripture. If he claimed conviction, madmen have the strongest convictions. Every path led to a wall. Jesus looked at him. A long, quiet look. Ezra, you've spent 30 years asking men to prove they're real. And your mind has rejected every answer. Because your mind was designed to reject. After Miriam, after Hannah's boy, you covered your wound with questions. Every false prophet you exposed was another layer over the wound. You told yourself you were protecting people. And you were. But you were also protecting yourself. Because if every miracle is a trick and every prophet is a liar, then you never have to trust again. You never have to love something you might lose. The fire was the only sound. Your question is not, how do I know you're real? Your question is it safe to believe again? Ezra opened his mouth. Closed it. Because the man had just described something Ezra had never admitted to himself. I won't give you proof, Jesus said. Proof is for the mind. And your mind will always find a way to dismiss it. Instead, I will give you something your mind cannot dismiss. What? Me. Not an argument. Not a miracle. Not a sign. Me. And you will have to decide, not with your mind but with the part of you that held your daughter while she died, whether what you see is real. The third question. Ezra was unraveling. Not because of logic, his logic was intact. But because someone had walked past every defense and was standing inside, naming things Ezra had never named himself. One question left. The question no one had answered in 30 years. His voice was hoarse. Stripped bare. If you are who they say, the Son of God, then you have the power to end all suffering. Right now. Tonight. You could heal every sick person. Stop every war. Feed every child. You have the power. So why don't you? Why heal one boy and walk past 1,000? If you can do everything, why do you do so little? Jesus stood. Walked around the fire. Stood in front of Ezra. And knelt. The Son of God knelt in the dirt in front of the man who had come to expose him. He took Ezra's hands. The hands of a skeptic. Rough hands. Old hands. Hands that had dug a child's grave. Ezra. You ask why I don't end all suffering tonight. He was close. Firelight on both their faces. I didn't come to end suffering. I came to enter it. Ezra frowned. If I ended all suffering tonight, if every disease vanished and every war ceased, you would worship a God of power. But you wouldn't know a God of love. Because love is not the absence of suffering. Love is the presence of someone inside your suffering. He squeezed Ezra's hands. When Miriam was dying, what did you want? An explanation, a theology lesson? No. What? From 23 years deep, I wanted someone to be there. Yes. You wanted someone to sit in the dark with you. Not explain it. Not fix it. Just be there. Jesus held his gaze. That is why I came. Not to wave a hand and end the dark. To walk into it. To sit in it. To carry it. And I will end it not with a wave, but with a cross. I will carry all of it. Every sickness. Every death. Every Miriam. I will carry it in my own body. And I will break it. From the inside. He let go of Ezra's hands. Stood. And said one final thing. You came with 3 questions. But you've only ever had one. It was never about theology or proof or suffering. What was my question? Your question was, is anyone there? Jesus placed his hand on the old man's head. I am here. Ezra didn't move for a long time. The fire burned to embers. The disciples slept. Stars blazed overhead. The lake was black and still. And Ezra sat in the dirt. The walls were gone. Not destroyed, dissolved. The way morning mist dissolves when the sun rises. Not violently. Inevitably. He reached beneath his tunic. Pulled out the leather cord. Held the small braided bracelet in his palm. 3 strands of goat skin. 23 years old. He ran his thumb across it. Miriam, he said it aloud for the first time in 23 years. And it didn't hurt. Not because the loss was gone. But because the loss was no longer alone. Someone had knelt in the dirt and held the hands that had held her and said, she's alive. He looked at Jesus. Sleeping by the dying fire. The way any man sleeps after a long day. But also the man who had known a daughter's name without being told. Who had described a grave beneath a split olive tree. Who had seen a hidden bracelet through cloth and skin. Who had answered the unanswerable not by answering but by kneeling. He woke at dawn. Jesus was standing at the edge of the lake. Gold light on the water. Ezra walked to him. They watched the sun rise in silence. I came to test you, Ezra said. I know. I had 3 questions. You had 1. Ezra was quiet. Then, you never proved anything. You didn't perform a miracle for me. You didn't give me evidence that would hold up in a debate. My colleagues will say I've gone soft. They'll laugh. The great skeptic broken by a campfire conversation. He paused. But I can't unsee you. I can't unknow what I know. And what I know has nothing to do with logic. What do you know? You knew her name. not the way a sorcerer knows pulling information from the air. You said Miriam the way I used to say it when I tucked her in at night. With tenderness. As if she matters to you. As if she's real to you right now. His voice broke, but he kept going. And if the God of the universe holds my daughter's name in his mouth with that kind of love, then she's alive. And you're real. And there is someone there. Jesus put his hand on Ezra's shoulder. You didn't waste 30 years, Ezra. Every question you asked led you here. Every fraud you exposed protected someone. You weren't running from me. You were looking for me. You just didn't know it. The sun cleared the horizon. The lake blazed with light. And Ezra the scholar, the watchman, the man who had dismantled 100 prophets, stood beside Jesus and watched the morning fill the world. He had no more questions. Not because they were answered. Because the one who held the answers was standing next to him. And that was enough. The fire has gone out. But somewhere on a lake shore, at dawn, an old man is holding a small braided bracelet and smiling. He came with 3 questions and left with none. He came to find a fraud and found God. He came as a watchman on a wall and discovered that the one he was guarding against was the one who had been guarding him all along. If you have questions, bring them. If you have walls, that's fine. Because the one who is coming for you doesn't climb over them and doesn't break through them. He walks through them. And when he finds you holding the name you never speak, wearing the wound you never show, he kneels. And he holds your hands. And he says the name. And you know. Shall we continue?